Test 1 2 testing audio for the stream. Test audio for the stream. Testing candidate mic, or I mean audience mic, question mic. Testing. Testing candidate mic for stream. Testing candidate mic for stream. Test. Turn it up some more. Test. I could turn it up there too. Test 1 2 test 1 2 test. Test 1 2 test 1 2. All right, mic test is complete, I believe. So we will go ahead and go to our wait screen, and we'll be back shortly. Thank you for watching.
Just want to greet everybody, let everyone know thank you for coming. My name is Elena Nanagas. I'm a part of the volunteer group Nixyaawii Forward that's hosting the Candidates Forum along with the Community Forum, another volunteer group on the reservation. So we'll just talk quickly about some ground rules for the candidates. They're going to have an opportunity to introduce themselves for 1 minute each. There are packets in the back with all their information that they filled out and submitted. So they're going to have 1 minute to introduce themselves, and we're going to go into questions from General Counsel. So General Counsel folks will have 30 seconds to ask a question. Our timekeeper will wave, you're getting close to the end of your 30 seconds and stop. And the same thing for the candidates. So they'll have 1 minute, but then at 10 seconds, then you're ready to stop. Let's see. Make sure your cell phones are off. No disruptive behavior. Everything went great last night. I'm assuming it'll be the same this evening. Kind of common sense. Let's see here. Yeah, it's just, be courteous when other people are talking. I'll walk around. People can raise their hand, and I'll walk around, and you can ask your question. So you got 30 seconds again to ask your question, and then they have 1 minute to respond. This evening we have Lindsay Watchman and Kathleen Elliott running for General Counsel Chair. We'll conclude about 5:55 with these folks, and then at about 6 o'clock, we'll have the treasurer candidates, which is Andrea Hall and Rosinda Shippentower, along with the BOT secretary candidates, Roberta Wilson and Monica Paradise. And at the end of the night, we'll do the BOT chair candidates, Julie Taylor and Kat Brigham, that are here. So with that, I have asked someone to do a brief invocation for us before we get started. Vivian DeMary. Started. Kathleen, do you want to start off with your 1 minute introduction? Okay. Is our timekeeper ready? Okay, just a second.
Good evening. I'm Kathleen Elliott. My maiden name is Peterson. I was born and raised here by my grandmother, Maudie Craig, Maudie Antone. My mother had went away to school and became a nurse, and she was hurt working at St. Anthony's. After that, nobody would hire her around here. Back in the late 50s and early 60s, as we all know, it was difficult for natives to get jobs in town or at any profession that didn't have to do with the tribal government. And so she went with the relocation program and was moved to Oakland, California. My mother lived there for nearly 40 years before she passed away. But my sister Peggy and I were raised by our grandmother Maudie Craig. I think my sister was early teen. But at any rate, I'm here to stand up. I've got the courage to stand up today and be in front of everyone, and I'm ready for whatever questions you have. Thank you.
Todd Sklawit, Ni Klawit, Sia Klawit, Waiklo Inam, Himima, Kalatiwama. Himakas Katsiaya, Hani Watona, Kila Hypa, In Laloitza, Kipium, Kitpa. Ainwa Nixya, Petiwis, Tatoka Timki, Soyapo Timki, Lindsay, Xavier Watchman. My grandma was Atwai Eva Shippentower Watchman. My grandpa is Nathan Dick Sr., also Atwai. My parents are Francis and Leslie Watchman. I'm blessed to have 7 children: Mariah, Kiana, Moses Grace, Isabel, Elliot, my 6-year-old Jalen. I also have 2 beautiful grandsons, Riot and Riker, which are altogether my greatest achievements. So again, very thankful for this opportunity and perhaps your vote to serve again in this role that I give myself maybe a B plus, maybe a B, some other lower grade last time I tried, but a better grade this time around. So thank you all for your time.
Does anybody have a question to kick off for the candidates?
I'm going to be repetitive, but I think this is an important question. If you could consider what is your number 1 priority. And I'm Andrea, X1109.
So my grandmother served as chairman of the Board of Trustees, chairman of the General Council. My mother was active as a board member also. They didn't receive a paycheck. They did it because they loved their people. They loved their people, so that's why they did it. But the reason why I'm asking for you to vote for me is my intention is to strengthen our tribe's rule-making process and ensure that our tribal members' voices are truly represented. When you come to General Council, we need to have action items. Action items need to be voted on. Each General Council, each month when we come here, we need to get together and we need to make decisions. And we need to let them know, let the Board of Trustees know that the goals are by our people and not by the executive offices.
So the same question, most important thing. Certainly in this particular role is communication. Again, there were areas last time around that we all wanted to improve as a team, ran out of time. I stepped aside. So the communication plan within the Office of General Counsel to be fully vetted, get that, multiple drafts and one that includes every possible way for General Counsel to communicate with you in multiple feedback loops, social media, hard copies, surveys, whatever. You might get tired of us reaching out at some point, and if that's the style that the board has, the seating board that's elected, then we will be coming to General Counsel because it takes a lot of resources to make those things happen. So certainly the communication, once we could all at least know what's going on, then we can have a better view and some facts before and conclude and sharing our contribution. So thank you for your time. Good question.
May Hufford, X904. I want to ask, and something I've asked last night to the candidates who were the vice chairs of General Counsel. I'd like to have you talk about whether you'd like to see a change of when General Counsel occurs and how often it occurs. And, and how serious are you going to take those people that talk from the floor about what they're seeing in our community? So 3-part question there.
Thank you, Coco, for that question. Good question. Again, definitely one of the areas of that General Counsel's communication plan. It was an idea. Even before COVID hit, there was an opportunity for tribal members to participate in General Counsel off the res. You couldn't be 1,000 miles away in college participating. So big silver lining for that period of time, pushed everybody. Some of us knew the capability, but again, nevertheless, this whole General Counsel and its attendance in chambers as well as signing on reached 100, 140 for those first half a year after we implemented Zoom. Everybody learned the technology, their elders sitting on the couch, piping in and called on them, so that's true engagement. So that's just, again, example of the communication that we can continue to strengthen. Shauna, Michael Ray Thomas, they've had ideas for a long time, and we're slowly implementing those. So, all right, thank you. That sound of all.
Coco, yes. I know that I'm not sure what prompted the change from general council to 2 o'clock in the afternoon on a Thursday afternoon. People can take there's time that they can take to take off to come to general council, but you also have your duties that you're being paid to do. General council, when it was held at Yellowhawk, from what I recall, there was crowds there every month, and it was in the evening, and it started at 4 and 4:30 in the evenings, and it did go till late in the hours, till something was resolved. And that's how I feel is something that we need to change, maybe to the evenings. I know that parents have their kids involved in all sorts of activities after school, so sometimes it's hard for families to come, for parents to come to the meetings, but, do we have it on Saturdays? Do we have one meeting on a Thursday evening and another one following that Saturday? That's something for the people to decide.
Ask question now.
Yes, state your name and your number.
Okay. Lindsay, this is Elfrida Kipp, X523. Tuning in again, Lindsay.
Here we are.
I agree with the last lady, though, on the timing of the general council. It would seem more feasible as families get off work, get their kids out of school, and attend, maybe even for the later session. That's a good idea, I think. But the question I have for you is, I was aware of all your activities when you was on the council before, and I give you a definite B+. Okay?
Thank you. Thank you.
And the question I have tonight is, because you're want to come aboard again, is as chairman, how do you process within the general council staff and maybe with the BOT collaboration to decide what issues become before the general council? If you think they're political issues that don't belong in the general council per se, or if they're issues that really are for the community and would be okay for the general council, how would you process that?
Thank you again for the compliment and the question. Again, it's about interaction. Now, I don't think the last time I didn't even think about moving it past 2 to 4. And the idea until it was asked last night, of course, I didn't say it earlier in my answer, is we wanted to meet bi-monthly to have kind of informal general council, a community gathering, a general council community gathering. It would take a little bit more resources than the budget that we had at the time to be able to implement that fully, so again, those kind of opportunities always going to be welcome too and should be included in that plan. The other general council officers have a lot of ideas also on what to put in there, so we'll go through multiple drafts to try and make it good and start practicing everything that's in it. Second half of your question was, are we good, Auntie? Yeah. That's the reason why I chose this position years ago, is so that it wouldn't be my own knee-jerk reaction every time something came up without some facts or this, that, never enough information. So it teaches you to be objective. 5149 is my nightmare. I'm not going to vote. And I'm stating the people aren't clear to me and to everybody else. That's the direction they want to go. So we just got to make it obvious what we want and clear in some way.
We'll have to wait and follow up with your question again in a bit.
Boots Pond X1934. Starting off with Kathleen and then on to Lindsay. This question: What is your opinion on all board members being present to vote on important matters instead of just a quorum of 5 or 6? Is it important for you to get a full board present to vote, and why?
Okay, so I think that having the full board present when we're voting on something that's come up in front of the board that, like, let's just say for the liquor sales up at Arrowhead, I'm just going to use that as an example. I think that it's important that everybody be there, especially the general council chair, because the general council chair is going to be there voting on what the people ask them to vote on. If they ask that the general council chair vote no to sales at Arrowhead, and we've got the other 8 board members where they're mixed, then that could be the deciding vote. I think it's very important that everyone be present and be able to vote on whatever referendums are in front of them.
So every past board member knows that every time they vote yea, nay, or abstain, that it's forever recorded on how they stand on that issue. I think nobody takes that responsibility lightly. It's difficult when it's a 4-4 situation and the chair has to make a decision because it's that close, and sometimes it's that urgent that we have to go in one direction or another. You know, so that's not an enviable position, and happened to us only a few times when we didn't communicate and get enough facts and keep on gathering before we had to make the decision at the last minute. You know, so you know, that responsibility is, you know, always there. But the rest of your question again?
Hey, hold on. Is there anybody else that has a question that hasn't asked a question yet? I'm trying to get everybody in and then come back to others for a second go round.
Okay, thank you. She says 30 seconds. But the reason I usually take a little longer with a question is that there needs to be some background, you know, in some of the questions. And this goes back to general counsel some years ago at Yellowhawk. And we used to get pretty feisty, you know, and you know, it was good and wasn't, but that's what we did. But anyhow, one time there was going to be a fight between 2 guys and 2 women, and the guy and they were going to go outside and fight, but then somebody called the police, and then the 2 women, they calmed down, but they were, you know, like I said, feisty. Okay, and then what would you do in that kind of a situation? I noticed, I was just looking at the Constitution, and we don't have a sergeant at arms anymore. But it was, you know, we were all, some of us, you know, pretty aghast, but, you know, we, you know, worded it out quite a bit, but not, you know, calling, well, let's just go outside then. Okay, well, 2 couples going out. But anyhow, what would, you know, what would you do? Just send them out?
You can't plan for that kind of question. No. You know, no, that would be my second worst nightmare, Auntie. You know, is having a fisticuffs in my, I mean, all those years I've been out there refereeing basketball, U tournaments, and not until this recent family basketball tournament did I ever lose control of a whole basketball arena. And it's not light on me how much it takes to keep all that energy, you know, focused on something, you know. And, you know, so general counsels, even since I've been little, yes, attending those in Yellowhawk, you know, in the evening, you know. Now, forever starting at 4, we'll probably start right now. The point is that they were full of energy. People really cared about the topic at hand, and I even watched people leave so that there wouldn't be a quorum left. I was like, oh, gee, and now I'm learning tribal politics. I was like, all right, well, I guess to be continued on the topic. You know, I got to go out and rally some more people think, you know, your way and want to go in that direction. So, you know, the whole point is, you know, a safe learning environment, and hopefully we can share, you know, our ideas, perspectives, you know, and the board, of course, takes them serious, which they always did last time I was around, too. So I'll close with that. Thank you.
Well, that's a good question. Well, then general counsel chairperson becomes a referee. But, you know, what would you do, Rosenda? Yeah. You know, I mean, you know, you ask everybody to calm down, but, you know, but that's all you can do, or ask them to leave because you're trying to conduct business. No way. But thanks for the warning.
Alex Nilo, X1713. When the BOT or a department takes an action that is legally sound but goes against what the community or general counsel considers culturally wrong, what will you do as a leader to bridge that divide and restore balance?
Well, that's something that I'm sure has happened in the past, and most certainly will probably happen again. I think that when something terrible happens in our community and there's controversy, then it's time to maybe not call a special general counsel, but to call a community meeting where we can all the general counsel can sit down and talk about whatever the matter was and see how we can help the executive director, how we can be of service to everyone, and so that we have a good outcome and that we can still get along, and because we have to be reminded every day that we are supposed to be one heart, one mind. And so I just think that maybe having a community forum, getting together and coming up with some solutions.
Would you repeat your question, Alex? Thank you. I just want to get them all answered.
When the BOT or department director makes a decision that is legal, and it goes against the community's or general council's cultural values, what will you do as a leader to bridge that divide and restore the balance?
Yeah, good question, Alex. So, yeah, again, it's a tough balance. There's the legislative branch, that's your board of trustees and general counsel, and then you have your executive branch. That's the staff, or sometimes called the subject matter experts, right? You know, and certain things, yes, they are, and other times not so much. But nevertheless, you know, collectively, you know, they're representing who we are. One of the decisions that we made in my first term that we got some heat for, you know, was canceling leases. You know, and everybody lost some income from that. And, you know, from my non-land owning perspective, I was sold with the idea, which is, I'm sure, valid, you know, from that perspective, about taking the animals out and letting the land, you know, come back itself. And then other people, like, you gotta have animals in there to help turn over the soil and such. So I don't know who's right, you know, but so again, you get that balance between subject matter experts telling you the truth, the whole truth, none but the truth, so you can make a good decision as a board member, sometimes in just a work session or two. Thank you.
Sam Spino, X3780. It was just, would you be willing to formalize the use of Robert's Rules of Order and parliamentary procedure? And with that, would you be willing to create the position of a sergeant at arms, which is the parliamentary procedure expert?
I was gonna volunteer Auntie Rosenda when she brought it up, and now I know Sam wants the job. Now I got my sergeant at arms. no, it's a good. It's never been in the Constitution. At least that it interpreters a third role, but certainly, it's an important role. It has meaning. It's a valued member of the team. So Robert's Rules of Order, the actual published version is about that thick. So I'm hoping you'd only tie me to a few pages that make sure that we're efficient within the meeting, and at the end have some clear objectives, and a way to kind of reach them. So thank you, Sam.
I think that the general counsel currently does use the Robert's Rules of Order, just as most of the committees and commissions do. So adding a sergeant at arms, I don't know. Since we've never had one, we've never needed one. Maybe we did need one a couple of times, but what their actual duties to be standing there at the door like you are and making sure that everything is kept in order. I think that at times we may need a sergeant at arms. Maybe we should, something that we can think about, something that can be brought up at general council and brought in front of the people so that they can vote. Everything that's, anything that's been done at general council, it can be done. We have the power. We are at the top of the food chain.
Susan Shuships, X468. Last night when the vice chair candidates were talking, Donald Sampson was asked about the size of the Board of Trustees, and he mentioned that Coeur d'Alene Tribe does well with 5 Board of Trustee positions. So if such a amendment was to take place, who would it be the election committee that would initiate such a thing, or would it be your position that would organize such a change in the Board of Trustees composition?
Yeah, that's interesting questions when you start talking to other tribal councils. When you're on travel, this one Alaskan tribe, they had 90, and every year 30 had to run. So there was constant discontinuity, and I think that's, one of the things, that is really disruptive, is when key people leave, and some of the projects that were moving quickly aren't all of a sudden moving anymore, so, what was the second half of your question, Angie?
Who would be in charge of implementing it, such an amendment?
I don't know. Robert's Rules of Order, Sam. Look it up for a sergeant at arms. I don't know the answer. We'll get back to you. So thank you. That was a good question. You stumped me a little bit there.
Well, just like I have to agree with what Lindsay said, I'm not sure who would be in charge of that, but something like that would take a few elections to get put in place. I think that with the amount of people that we have right now, some of them are stretched thin. Our members at large that are out there representing us in different fields, are the executives, the executive committee, the chairman, they're out working, championing for us for certain subjects. Everyone has their own subject that they're like a subject matter expert that they're good at. And so I think that keeping the current amount of Board of Trustees that we have is sufficient. And if we can go to staggered terms at some point where we have 3- and 4-year terms, that would probably work even better.
Anybody have a question or a follow-up question?
I have a suggestion. 2 years maybe 3 years, is when the BOT gave the seniors a special, or the luncheon, and then you guys came and did a presentation 2 years ago, because I didn't go last year, maybe 3 years ago, okay. But anyway, I rose my hand, and I think, or it was during a forum, maybe 2 or 3 forums back, I rose my hand and I said, okay, I have a question, a suggestion. Why don't we have an ethics commission, just like we have departments and so forth? Because we're talking about a lot of behavioral issues, fighting, yelling, overtime, not getting along, Robert's Rules of Order is not good enough. Or these are behavioral. So why don't we have an ethics commission? Because that ethics deals with behavior. With the board needs to have ethics, the general counsel, the community members, we all need to be ethical. Why don't we have a commission? Then my response at that time, I think I asked you, Lindsay, and don't want to put you on the spot, but you didn't like the question. And we didn't get too far with it, but you said, well, we couldn't be like the Yakimas, where everyone's got their camera out and they're chasing general counsels all over on a weekend and everything, taking pictures, and it would just be chaotic. However, things don't have to be chaotic, because if you knew you had an ethics commission who made recommendations and we all had to abide by them, everybody, BOT, general counsels, community meetings, then that would be the sounding board to talk about all these issues that no one really has a good answer for. And behavior is hard to discipline. We all know that as parents. So this is just a parent, this is the version of the parents scolding everybody, and it's called an ethics commission. So that's my suggestion. Again.
Any other questions? I've got a question on the live stream. Oh, okay. Boots, and I'll go back to Alex.
Okay, start off with Lindsay, then Kathleen. So Cayuse Holdings, what's needed to be done to get the most out of this tribal entity to benefit the rest of the tribe?
Oh, I've been watching Cayuse Holdings since Uncle Bob Shipping Tower. I carried that torch. My eagle eye on that place, and yeah, it's currently, or it currently has in a year and a half ago, turning over hands and new CEO and a little more native operated. A lot of potential. Right now, I think it's too heavy on, skill sets that you outsource and do from afar off the reservation. It ain't jobs that, jobs that, local workforce, development pathways can be, there. Days and, is a great example of drone. Love that industry. It's going to blow up. We've just taken care of a grant that's very successful, highlighted in Indian country that we can do that, so it's a big building, needs to be repurposed. It's somewhat fortified right now because those federal contracts, but it's in new hands. I'll definitely, again, be bird's eye view on, straight on it, looking at their ideas, and seeing how they can turn things around. Thanks for the question.
Cayuse Holdings is a big hot topic amongst, I think, all tribal members. When they first started out back in 2007, they were all gung-ho about hiring and training tribal members. That was the mission statement, and one of them was to hire tribal members first. That is still in their personnel policies. It's written. Whether that's happening, I don't know. I don't know of any tribal members that have been hired up there recently, and so yeah, we need to question it. What are you doing to hire tribal members and train tribal members? That's how it was meant to be, was to train, and that's not been being done. You can get a job if you want to move to DC or Hawaii, but yeah, we need to question them.
Alex, X1713. I'm just very curious about your guys' thoughts about how you'll ensure the planning commission's process are equitable and don't disadvantage elders or low-income families who want to build on their trust lands.
What was the beginning of your question? How will
you respond, or how would you meet with folks of the GC, but also with the planning commission, the planning department, on how the process of building homes on trust land will be easier, or how can we meet to make that successful?
Well, I just happened to go through that process. It was a long process. I have taken notes. At some point, I will take all my notes and write them into some kind of form. One of my goals is to assist the tribal members where there's many people that are landowners, and how you are able to navigate the planning department in order to build a home, in order to put a mobile home on your land, but someplace where you can be neighbors with your family members. It is a difficult, arduous process, but it's doable. And I'm going to be writing a step-by-step here soon.
I totally, absolutely agree with Kathleen. It took way too long, too many hoops. And how do we get more homes? We need inventory. How do we get them for all the different sizes that we want? There is a plan. Nagel's the next property. JD, the executive director at the last general council, or a general council, mentioned 2 or 3 other ideas. So they're there. They're platted. They're on a piece of paper as going to get to, so they just need to get to sooner, because we all need to have a little space. We need to have our home so we can pursue the jobs and explore those things, and stay here and get our roots. And, we're beyond HUD housing. Some people need that there, but the rest of us want, townhouses and condos and passed down 99-year leases. We're not afraid to commit. I was a big proponent of the neighborhood. But slowly, I felt like I had a landlord again. So again, yeah, definitely make it easier. Kathleen, though, applaud her and her family for sticking it through. It's great to see her home up there and her family.
Hi, Levon Herrera, X1176. I was wondering if ever that we're going to come with any kind of jurisdictional boundaries, like for tribal elections, say only tribal people can vote tribally, and the city or state, you can vote within the state, but the city, because we live here on the reservation. So is there ever going to be any kind of, well, it's kind of awkward, but I go into the city and I vote for the city, but they can't come out here, right? So is that ever going to stop to where tribal can only vote for tribal, and then we can only vote state but not city? Does anybody know?
Great, Levon, I need you to rephrase that for me. I didn't track you very well.
So we vote city, right? Some of you go in the city and vote for city mayor, right? So we vote state and we vote tribal. So there has to be a jurisdiction thing where they can't come out and vote for us, right? The city can't come vote for us?
No.
No. So are we ever going to stop voting for the city mayor and just vote for the state governor? Or is that ever going to be an effect, or an effect, it's going to affect the tribe?
That's an interesting question that I haven't spent any time thinking about. So you stumped me. I'm going to see if you're stumped and just be shy and slide this over.
Well, when I lived in town, I voted for the city. But when I moved out here to the reservation, to my own property, into my own home, somehow the city forgot to send me a ballot.
a question online.
We have a question on the live chat on YouTube. Cola X2124. We have an active local case, two-part question. What is your knowledge of the current state and federal legislation for MMIWP, and what policies would you advocate for on behalf of the General Council be implemented on the tribal level?
Okay, can you repeat the first part about the state?
Yeah, it says, what is your knowledge of the current state and federal legislation for MMIWP, and what policies would you advocate for on behalf of the General Council be implemented on the tribal level?
Okay, well, as far as I'm aware, that I know that the state has had a proclamation regarding the MMIW, and they do support the MMIW. If the tribe has, we've had different proclamations. Of course, we support the MMIW. We currently have actively looking for someone here on our own reservation. And so, again, it is what the General Council is asking for is what we will implement in whatever the General Council votes on is what I will bring to the Board of Trustees and let them know that this is what the people want. That would be my job as the General Council Chair. I fully support all of the MMIW actions that have been taking place here on the reservation. I want to continue to support that. Thank you.
When you're on the board, you get assigned different topics, and Core SAMS for the 4 years was on MMIW. And one time we needed a CTUIR representative. She couldn't make it, and I went to Montana to hear some testimony on the situation. It was one of the last hearings, like 14th out of 16. You know, getting testimony from families, and broke my heart. I'm gonna try not to cry now, but it was sad. You know, so many cases, you know, and everybody just wanting closure. You know, and come to find out there in Montana, North Dakota, South Dakota, I mean, the law enforcement just don't care, haven't cared. You know, not until we've highlighted that they don't care, now do they care or shall they care? You know, great, it was great to see, you know, our missing loved one, you know, splashed on other newspapers and, you know, social media. But sad, so not enough resources, you know, like the boarding school, you know, resources are finally being dedicated to, you know, taking care of our loved ones that we're missing so that we can find closure. You know, I'm definitely directly impacted by that. Cousin, good question. And again, all resources to help people heal and close is what should be dedicated.
Any more questions or any follow-ups? Back here.
Hi, I'm Vivian DeMary, and my family name is Wolf. I looked into about the code of ethics and asked one of the board members about it. I asked Gary Burke about it, and he told me to ask Roberta. So she did. She looked under the Constitution, and there would need to be a resolution because there is nothing stating in the Constitution about a code of ethics for Board of Trustees. Because as we know, there are some people that have been let go because they've done things to the tribe financially, morally, and ethically wrong. And so there needs to be something, because we as a people are supposed to be held to high standards. That's where we come from. Government to our ethics into standing for their government. And so we need to hold ourselves to that higher standard. So it's just a statement, it's not a question.
thank you for finding the answer out for us. We'll have to, put it on the agenda, whomever, and give some time on the floor to talk about it further.
Anybody else have a question or follow-up?
How do you intend to increase participation for general counsel?
I'm bringing back the wheel. You're right, who misses the wheel? That was fun. I have to give credit, and then board members, when they go travel, they'd all pitch in, take the best of the loot, and, no, it was fun, making general counsel a little bit more interactive. First time around, I forget, especially with Zoom. I mean, you can go into group out sessions, and I don't have to set up the chairs these ways. We can be in circles, and we can have small groups, and then we can have share outs. I'm an educator. That's, think, pair, share. Think, pair, share. It's a concept, so I want to make it a little bit more interactive, put a little bit of my teaching style into general counsel without, going too crazy for the old timers. Sorry, that was that section that was represented way somewhere around that area, and all the wisdom, but, not be too fluffy, but, get some work done and, get in those language lessons, just 5 minutes of here, there, whatever. So ideas, throw them at us, try to spruce it up a little bit. So thank you for the question.
Food attracts everybody. I think that if we were to, what was discussed earlier, maybe have a formal general council meeting once a month, and then designate another day for just a community forum, the community to get in and talk about what their concerns are, share a meal, offer some food, have a potluck style, anything. But I just know that usually when you advertise it, there's going to be stew and fry bread at a general council. People show up. At least they show up at least until sign in and give some opinions. But I think that if we just, more of the online really helps, but getting more people in the doors, letting them know what's happening in our community and that we want to hear what is important to them will draw them in, as long as we let them know that what you're thinking, what your concerns are important to me.
We've got about 5 minutes left with this group. Does anybody else have any questions? And streaming? Kat does.
I'm sorry. I said the chat has a question. She thought I said cat. So Cat's looking at me like, what? All right, ladies and gentlemen, we have candidates. We have a question on the chat. The first one is Sophia Taulaeris, X1781. Says, what is your vision for a healthy tribal community, and what is one way the work of the General Council can contribute to that?
Well, for a healthy general council is, for us all to, be disease-free, which that's not going to happen. But we can do our best by encouraging everyone, not just the youth, but everyone to be active and stay active. It's really hard, especially during the winter months, but there's still things that we can do together. Maybe we can, have a quick walk before general council. Let's all meet at 3:30 and go for a walk. But can you ask the second part of the question?
It just asks, what's your vision for a healthy tribal community, and what is one way the work of the General Council can contribute to that?
I think that just one of the ways that we can keep after people is to lead by example. And that's, like I said, have an exercise section or session. Again, it doesn't have to be at general council. General council is about taking care of business. But at community events, encouraging more community events that include physical activity.
So yeah, a perfect example of discontinuity is, a new health and wellness center out here in a place where I identified and a price tag starting to be developed, was something that was high on the terms that I was serving on the list. And now it's not very high on the list at all. So I continue to go to the RAC Athletic Club. Every few years we do a community health assessment. Everybody should take it. Let them know how you're doing, because together all that information data says how healthy our community is. And then we have a community, then we can create, work with Yellow Hawk. They're asking for our help, all stakeholders, for their community health improvement plan. So, yeah, it's policy, systems, and environments, but if you want to be healthy, it's about access. Can you walk around without being chased by a res dog? Can you go for a jog? I walked through the projects the other day, the little tough wiener dog come running at me. I'm like, man, I'm gonna have to get off my bike. He thinks he's gonna chase me, but nobody should be afraid to walk, and I mean, dogs are a side issue, but again, we have to have a healthy environment, access to be healthy, and those resources need to continue going that direction. Thank you.
And there's a second question, Sandra Sampson, X776. It was suggested that the possibility to implement a resolution process for general counsel. What is your response to this process?
Did you say Sandy Sampson? Sandra Sampson, yeah. Well, she's trying to set me up. What? The rules and policy as good as I do.
X776.
Gee whiz, every time I do something.
I'm not sure if that's a response to the previous question about the MMIWP on the tribal level, but that's one of the questions we have there. So.
Well, I hope they're not related, because that's a way different topic. And Sandy, I've fluffed stuff, Robert's Rules of Order, in the chambers here before, and everybody corrected me, and it took me like 3 minutes to understand what everybody was yelling at me about. So yeah, you work through it, and okay, we're all take a breath. No fisticuffs. We might need a sergeant at arms. So that's all.
Any more questions? One more? Oh, sorry.
Cola Shipping Tower X2124. What are some suggestions or ideas that you have for providing a more secure connection to the general council meetings for those that are attending virtually? There have been some rumors that our general council members will attend, but they are allowing for non-tribal members who work for tribal departments to be able to listen in on some of the different things that we're discussing. It is a concern for many of us within this community that some of the information that we're talking about here is being shared with non-tribal members.
A very legitimate concern. Thank you, Cola, for bringing it up. Yeah, one of the very first things once we started going to Zoom, we, as in me, Shauna, Vice Secretary Mike Ray, and Thomas, said, how do we secure who's coming into the virtual room? Right, we even made you contact us first with your email, then we'd verify it with you, then we'd verify, and still do, I'm sure she does, verify with enrollment, and we'd see if the name and enrollment matters, so then you get the link to be able to join. But right, you could be sitting in a room with, your non-native friend listening to tribal business. Yeah, that is a concern, and I don't have any solutions for it, so that's kind of the other side of the coin. Going virtual. All businesses like that, I would sit on other nonprofit boards, and sometimes somebody out of the blue would just come in and listen, and they're playing music in the background, and then they jump off because they pushed the wrong number and join your meeting. So, so very legitimate concern.
Well, as has been suggested earlier and by other, not just in here, about changing the general council meetings to not be during work hours, that would, number one, prevent employees that are not tribal members from listening in. That would help. But people that are not, don't live on the reservation, we can't stop them from having their non-tribal family members from listening in. Like Lindsay had said, there's some things that we can't control. But I think that if we were to move the general council meetings to non-working hours, that would really help to keep our privacy during general council meetings.
We are at a good stopping point, I believe. We'll take a break and we'll get ready. Oh, and thank you. Thank you to Kathleen and for Lindsay for being here and for the questions from the general council members. We'll take about a 5-minute break and come back and we'll continue with the board treasurer candidates and the board secretary candidates at the same time.
Test. Oh, okay. And yeah, I got the question from Sandra Sampson completely wrong, so I apologize. It was a question about last night, something they asked last night. So apologize, Sandy. Be back shortly.
groups for either one. So make sure your questions apply to the correct group. We'll do our best to keep these separate. So if you ask a question, let's say for the secretary group, then we'll have each secretary, potential candidate or candidate secretary answer that, and the same for the treasurer group. And candidates have 1 minute to respond to the general counsel questions. And each of you will have 1 minute to introduce yourselves. And we'll start at this end with Cedric.
Good evening. I'm Cedric Wild Bill, X883. My family background is my father is Rayfield Bill, my mother is Sheila Pond. My grandfather is Eliza and Philip Bill, and Walter and Inez Pond. That's about all I'm going to go on. Family. The reason I'm running for the secretary is because I believe that as a board member, that the education and health in our community is one of the priorities I want to look at and examine, because I've heard questions through this forum, and I tend to believe that health is our #1 priority, because if we do not have our health as a community, how are we going to go forward into the future? And I believe that has to start with our children. And I believe that we need to invest in that. Thank you.
Good evening, everybody. My name is Monica Paradise, and I am the granddaughter of Ronald J. Pond and Anna Jane Wilkinson Pond. My father is Clifford Punky Pond. I am also a descendant of the Shoshone Paiute tribes of Duck